I think you're right that curation is about taking some of that control and moving it closer to the source of the inventory.
Hello and welcome to Not Just Ads. In this episode, Cadi Jones, former colleague at Yahoo, polymath, has been on many different sides of the industry. So, Cadi, you're being on the buy side, sell side, working for a publisher, working for an alliance of publishers like Pangea. Have I left anything out?
I think you've covered pretty much most of it. I mean, I started out selling classified ads in the back of a magazine, so I feel like that used to be the route into this industry. So that's probably the only thing that people might not know that I did early in my career.
But then we can take from here, from print, and jump onto AI. There have been a lot of announcements recently, a lot of innovation, and it's exciting. It's exciting how technology can be leveraged to improve the the industry and the dynamics of the buying and selling. I wonder, though, in general, and I'm not specifically referring to any company or anybody, but I don't hear enough talking about media owners. At the end of the day, if we don't have quality on the media side, we everything, the castle collapses. What's your take on this?
I mean, absolutely, right? The quality publishers producing quality inventory where their audiences are engaged and leaning into the content is the foundation for our industry, right? Without that, why would an advertiser want to, want to serve an ad? And so you're absolutely right that I think quality is the inventory quality and the attention of audiences is the sort of the crucial pin, the keystone of the industry. And it's interesting that you jump to there from AI, because I think I see AI as being a route to effectively enable more demand, so advertisers to find that quality inventory more easily. Can I ask why that was the connection that you made? Do you associate AI with not quality?
No, 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 absolutely not. But I hear that a lot of the narrative is about AI, is about the tool, is about how we run the show. But very often, and it's not just now because we're talking about AI, but uh, uh, usually in ad tech circles, you don't hear about the environment, you don't hear about the audience as people, you don't hear about the quality content, and those things don't fall from the sky. That's what I mean. It feels that we are taking them for granted.
I see. Yes, and I think you're right. Initially, if we think back to really the sort of big arrival of AI in most people's lives, when there was the big moment of buzz for ChatGPT, 18 months ago or something like that. Now, I think a lot of the initial conversations were around using AI to generate content. Right, there was all of the focus on pictures of people with six fingers and that sort of thing. I think what's interesting is how we've moved on so quickly to think about using AI in smarter ways. I think the internet has just exploded and is continuing to expand. When you think about so many more media becoming possible to serve through that digital channel, it's interesting to think about how AI can perhaps be used to power the connections in a more intelligent way. Earlier this year, I went out to visit our machine learning data science team in Berlin. At Index, we have a big team there who are really focused on how do we get the right bid requests to each DSP in each millisecond, basically. And I think thinking about how we can use neural networks, so really advanced machine learning, how we can have AI influencing some of those decisions, and where we can remove some of perhaps the limitations that human thinking brings to those connections. I think that's why I'm excited about AI being perhaps a tool that will drive more demand to quality publishers, to quality, where there are quality audiences, because right now all it takes is for one thing to be misclassified, or one contextual targeting or brand safety signal to misfire, and that quality inventory doesn't make it through. And I think that's how, as these systems get more intelligent, get smarter, get faster, I think that lends itself to driving better connections between advertiser demand and those quality environments where real audiences of real humans can be reached in a more impactful way.
That's interesting, because you moving from the AI thinking to the human thinking. One of the first things that you told me just when you just joined the Index Exchange, you told me we've cut off all the resellers. And talking about quality, yes, you have done already something from a human perspective that takes away a lot of issues.
Yes, and I think we've had a lot of focus really since the arrival of header bidding in the industry around supply path optimization. So effectively DSPs restricting the inventory that they receive from SSPs, because the DSPs have to manage their costs. The costs have just exploded through that. And one of the sort of most important things you can do for a DSP is making sure they're getting the best inventory through the most direct path. So, for example, if we were working through a reseller, so if a DSP is accessing inventory through Index Exchange, through a reseller, and then the publisher, there's an additional hop, and that causes lots of issues. It causes an issue around potential for, let's just say, bad actors to get involved. Anytime there's an additional hop, there's a risk that something gets missed in the flow. It causes an issue really around the flow of money to quality publishers. Effectively, if there's a reseller with there's someone else taking money out of that transaction, who's not necessarily the entity that is responsible for creating that quality environment. And not only that, it also causes the extra hop incurs more sort of carbon because we're sending the bid request around the houses before it gets to who it needs to do. So that move to reduce greatly the number of resellers, we haven't cut off all of them entirely, but we are working through ensuring that Index Exchange is the best path to supply, and by best that really is most direct, both. So for all three of those reasons, in terms of routing more money onto working media, getting more money through to quality publishers, reducing carbon, and making sure that inventory quality is really is maintained. And so that path has been a very interesting path that Index has chosen to take. And we're able to do that because we operate purely as an SSP. We don't have buy-side tools within our SSP. We want to be the best route for quality demand to reach our quality supply, and I think that's that great reduction in resellers is a big focus area and kind of a sort of point of validation for that. I think the other piece that we've done, people aren't talking about it so much now, but is the work that we've done also around removing MFA sites from the exchange. It's interesting, as we have done this, you know, we were able to get into that practice very, very early on because we work and we're purely focused. We work purely taking a fee from our publishers that we've agreed with each of our publishers. We know publishers extremely well, and we know when we see a real publisher coming to the exchange, we know how their traffic builds, and we're used to seeing that. We have that sort of pattern mapped out. Anytime we started to see these new sites coming onto the exchange and popping up and not following that same pattern, and so very quickly the team were able to sort of look into this and go like, what is this? The first thing they checked is like, are these real humans going to these sites? And then we dug deeper to look at how they're getting there. And the policy that we implemented, 18 months ago now, was as soon as we see something that pops up that doesn't follow that pattern of what a real publisher, what a good publisher looks like, we're able to cut that site off at the node. And so no one can sit here and say that their exchange is 100% MFA free, but we have a zero tolerance approach to it. So really, when it comes to quality, I think the piece that I'm most excited about here at Index Exchange is just that consistent approach, whether it's to MFA, taking swift action and having that zero tolerance approach, whether it's to gradually removing the resellers from our exchange. I think that the most interesting point is whenever we've taken a stance like this to do the right thing in the industry, what we see is that the demand reroutes. We're able to grow our business because we know that the buy side appreciates being able to reach those quality audiences, which you're right, they don't grow on trees, they don't fall from the sky. Quality publishers spend time building out their relationship with their audience. And so for us to be able to make those drastic changes, which initially do hurt our revenue, but we see that advertiser spend very quickly gets rerouted, and so more revenue, more money goes to those publishers, those quality inventory partners that we work with. And that's, I think, the most pleasing thing about it. You can do the right thing and reap business rewards from taking those right decisions.
Does this not prove my point when I say that a lot of the issues in the industry could be removed by making the right choice, a human choice, a simple choice, an obvious choice, while using an analogy, instead of fixing the top of our overflowing sink, we are all around the sink discussing on who's got the best mop. What you just described, you actually try to fix the top in the first place.
Exactly that. You know, I think it's an interesting analogy, right? People often liken the supply side to pipes. And if you think about, if we can control what is flowing through our pipes and making sure that that is the best quality premium supply, where audiences are leaning in and paying attention to the content that those quality publishers are producing, then yes, we can ensure the bathtub is full of good water, of good inventory.
And with curated marketplaces, you're jumping into a different topic. You, as the sell side, is regaining some control.
I think you're right that curation is about taking some of that control and moving it closer to the source of the inventory. If you think about the evolution of programmatic really in the last 7 to 10 years, I think the demand side platform have been given really all of the sort of decisioning power, and then also all of the rewards that come with that decisioning power, right? We've allowed the DSP to be the platform that is applying all of the targeting, doing all of the optimization, and to execute the campaign. I think what people, and people think of the SSP as just to keep going on this analogy, as the pipe through which the supply arrives. The job of the SSP being purely to send out a bid request, and then having all of the smarts, all of the decisioning sitting on that bid response that comes from the DSPs. When we come to, your point about is this human, is this AI, is really interesting here, because going back to the early days of programmatic, it used to be amazing that this would happen within 200 milliseconds because of the way that compute would work. I think we've seen such advances on the technology front that now it's possible to move some of that decisioning closer to the supply side. So effectively, if you think that an SSP might have the inventory from the publisher for around 10 milliseconds before they then send out that bid request to the DSPs, what curation is doing is enabling some of the targeting, some of the decisioning to be applied in that 10 seconds that inventory is with the SSP before the bid request is then issued to the DSP. And so that might be as simple as applying a target audience. It might be as complex as applying a custom algorithm. But that 10 milliseconds is now enough time to have decisioning made on that piece of inventory before the bid request is issued. And by doing it closer to the publisher, you can do it on the full scale of the SSP. So if you think some of the DSP partners that we work with might only receive 1% or even less than that of the total number of bid requests that we're able to issue, by being able to apply that decisioning, applying those smarts on 100% of the supply and ensuring then that the right inventory makes it through to the DSP, means that then the DSP can get more of the quality inventory that it needs for that specific advertiser, for that specific campaign. And so I think it's really, really a big shift that the technology advancements over the last sort of 10 years have really enabled. And I think we're only just at the very, very beginning of that journey that curation is sort of enabling. But I think you're right, it's about that almost a little rebalancing, so enabling some of those elements to be applied on the supply side to enable a DSP to do their job better. We're not talking about getting rid of DSPs in any way. It's just about how can we help them to access more of the inventory that they want that's going to be meaningful and useful to their campaigns. There's absolutely nothing worse as that you introduced me as someone who's worked on the buy side as well as the sell side. As putting my buy side hat on, there is absolutely nothing more infuriating than you agreeing a really amazing, complex targeting setup for a buyer and then setting it live and it just not delivering. And so this is really about getting maximum delivery for brands on the level of quality of inventory that they want at scale. And I think that's really what curation is unlocking.
And you mentioned the word balancing, and one of my mantras is that any ecosystem that is not balanced cannot thrive. So finding that balance, I think, is fundamental. But going back to curation, you work for an alliance as well. And I keep saying that a curated marketplace is the next best thing to an alliance. Obviously, you have an interest in that as working for an SSP. What's your perspective on alliance versus curation?
Uh, I think it's really interesting, and I think it really depends on what the advertiser or brand's objectives are. Um, Alliances provide a hugely valuable set of inventory combined with data to the market, but they are, by their very nature, constricted. They're limited to the publishers that are part of that alliance. And I think what we're seeing with curation is an ability to have some of that same approach, some of that same mindset, but with a little bit more flexibility for the buyer. So being able to to pick from publishers outside, from a more diverse group of publishers, perhaps. But they both provide slightly different capabilities in the market, and both are sort of valuable in their own way. And to your original point, both are really around moving some of those smarts, moving some of that decisioning closer to the publishers, which has to be a good thing to have a balanced ecosystem.
And what's a future for the programmatic open marketplace then into in within this context?
That's a really good question. I think I'm really going back a bit in time now,
Oh well,
but
you have
um,
found the right
I
counterpart
thought
to
I
go
might be
back
in the
in
right
time.
place for that. Right, anytime you're running a campaign, the one thing that you need to run is learning, right? You need a diagnostics line. You need something to tell you, am I, is there anything I'm missing out of? Is there anything else that that I ought to think about that might add value, that might drive performance against whatever the goals are for this campaign? And I think open marketplace really still provides that to the buy side. It enables them to access the entirety of the open internet and find out, it's effectively around inventory discovery. Are there pockets of inventory that might perform well, that might broaden, that might enable the advertiser to achieve results in perhaps in a different way, or to something that they hadn't considered before? And so I think as we do come into this age of AI, where it's perhaps less focused on taxonomies written by a human and more around generative AI, so an agentic, an agent of some kind, or around very advanced machine learning and this neural network being able to take in multiple signals at the same time and understand what's working. That, I think, will require ongoing access to open marketplace, but the learnings can happen much, much more quickly. And then to be able to access those points that are working at scale, that's when it moves from that open market discoverability into the world of curation and the world of curated deals, where it's less about discovery and more about maximizing impact and maximizing scale on the tactics that are working. So for me, there's always a role of open market, but I'd love to know your perspective on this. If you
Well,
don't mind sharing, Alessandro, what do you think?
I agree with you, providing that you have done, it's not about anything goes. in the open marketplace, providing that you first do what you described earlier. You remove bad actors, you remove hubs, you make sure that you start with a pool where there is a certain standard, a certain quality. And then I agree that there is space.
Yes, I mean, I think that's sorry, I take that as a given, but you're absolutely right. If someone in your audience listening today is working on the demand side, whether in an agency or a DSP, then absolutely focusing where you're accessing your open market from and choosing partners who do have strict quality quality control in place is an important criteria for that whole discoverability process to work effectively. It's a really good call out. Thank you.
But I think that it's also smart in terms of from the sell side, from a publisher side, being available where in environments associated with quality. You see, publishers, they are on dozens of different platforms and environments and using dozens of different channels. I don't think that in the long run is the way to go.
Yes, I mean, I think this is, we're at a sort of interesting time in the industry. I think we're going to see that evolve a lot with publishers choosing to work with the right partners much more rather than necessarily wanting to work with every potential partner on the supply side.
You are now, to close this conversation, you're now working on the piping, but that would be very reductive to say Cadi can only give advice on the SSP side. So if you are and talking about and thinking about what we said earlier about people, about engagement, about quality of the environment, even before the quality of inventory. Now, bringing all your different experiences together, what is your advice for the future for a media company?
Oh, that's a great question, and I think my question back would be, what do you mean by a media company? Is this for a publisher? This is for someone producing inventory?
I'm talking about a company. Publishers, sometimes publishers are associated with news media. I say media company as in it could be any type of content.
It's interesting because my advice to anyone in this space would be to think about trust with the partners that you're working with. I had the same positioning when I was working DSP side at Beeswax, thinking about it now for my role here at Index Exchange. Probably the common thread there was around log level access, getting access to the information about how your inventory is being bought or sold, and digging really deeply into that to ensure that the partners that you're working with are being transparent with you in terms of the fees they're taking, in terms of how they're representing you in market, but also who else they're representing. There are amazing tools like sellers.json and so on, put in place by the industry that give media owners the power to sort of investigate the partners that they're working with. And I think there is a time and place to look at the decisions that your partners are making on your behalf effectively, and making sure that they're making decisions that you like, making sure that they have the right quality assurance standards in place, because like it or not, when a buyer is accessing supply, they're looking at all of the inventory across that exchange. And what's interesting when we've talked about some of those moves that Index has been making for a long time towards quality, investing in being the exchange of quality supply, what we can see is that drives a sort of halo effect. DSPs learn that what they buy from Index Exchange is more performant, which means they seek out more supply from us. And so I think that that virtuous circle is driving best outcomes for the buy side, which also means driving best outcomes for our supply side partners as well. And so I think that comes into the log level data and technical lookups. It comes into the sort of policy approaches that we're taking. And it really comes down to leading the way in terms of the standards that we use across the industry. You mentioned now CTV being in this space, and so one of the things that we're doing at Index Exchange as part of the IAB Tech Lab, we're helping to create the standard now that will be used for live events, sporting, cultural events that happen and that create these huge spikes in inventory. We're writing the technical specs for that with the IAB. And so I think it comes down to having trusted partners who are leading the way on all things technical, but doing so in a way that is transparent and open, and not afraid to share that information with their partners.
And yeah, I think that to add to this, there are less and less excuses on the publisher media side about not knowing. You mentioned the IAB Tech Lab. There are a lot of initiatives that media owners can participate to.
Exactly. And I think that's a really good way of putting it. The information is there. There are lots of media owners who have now deep experience in evaluating their partners. So I think leaning into that evaluation, not every, it's not necessarily every week, every month, but leaning into the right partners is a piece of advice I'd love to leave with your audience today.
Great. Thank you very much, Cadi. Good luck for the challenges ahead, and see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me today. I've really enjoyed the conversation.